Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm Marni Amsellem, and I have a little bit about me at the end here, but I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I practice in Fairfield County and New York. I've been doing virtual therapy, been doing telehealth for long before the pandemic, actually. So that was not the hardest transition for myself. But what I'll be talking about today is certainly something that is affecting all of us right now in this pandemic, which is sleep. Okay, so remember back to mid-March when we were, it seemed like this was going to be something that would be a temporary situation. And we all had to go through a lot of adjustment. And we realized in April that this was going to be a lot more, quarantine was really going to be a way of life for some time. And, what we're realizing is this sometime is undefined. There is just a lot of uncertainty right now. So I ask this question to all of you right now. How has this pandemic affected your sleep to date? And you can add some, your comments. I won't be able to actually see it right now, I don't think. Yeah, I won't be able to see it right now, but in the chat room, we'll be coming back to that once we go to discussion. So feel free at any point to chime in there. But generally speaking, what's going on is we're having a lot, we have I think I can actually see the chat now. We are grappling with a lot of uncertainty, right? Which absolutely is weighing on us. And this right here is a word cloud that a research lab had done. There's a lot of research right now going on sleep and coronavirus. And this lab had posted this word cloud a few weeks ago, actually. And so this is what people are writing about and might resonate. Okay, so generally speaking, we all kind of know this, but I think it's important to discuss the premise here. We know we need sleep. When we don't have regular sleep, it affects our immune function, which of course is high on our minds right now. Challenges with cognition, with our thinking and memory. Also something that affects us day to day, can affect our appetites and our eating and other daily behaviors, right? Where we might think that we're hungry when that's not really what our that urge is inside. Over time, disrupted sleep, of course, can lead to other medical issues. And can affect your mental health. Certainly, it can help. It can contribute to or exacerbate your depression, anxiety, in general, mental health and well-being. Over time, it increases healthcare costs and affects productivity and loss of work, and leads to, on the short-term and long-term distress and decreased quality of life. So, on that happy note. This is what's going on right now for a lot of us, right? It's sort of like eat, sleep, stare at screens, repeat, and there's a lot of really timely memes that that I've included in this presentation right now. But basically, what's going on right now as far as sleep in quarantine is that being homebound for an unknown period of time with all of these unknowns can jeopardize healthy sleep for these reasons. It certainly affects our daily routine, and in so many ways, of course. We're all working from, those of us that are not essential workers are working from home. We are spending a lot more time inside, etc. We, until the past few days, have had non-consistent exposure to sunlight. And sunlight helps us regulate our circadian rhythm. So we orient to having daylight. I'll see that window behind me. That's not a wallpaper. That is my real window. And it's really important for us to be exposed to daylight, particularly early in the day. So that is something we'll be coming back to. Changes in physical activity levels. So if you are finding yourself more sedentary or differentially sedentary, that can affect our sleep. And then our interactions with the world are are virtual largely, and certainly through the news. And that is something that can weigh on us when we are learning about what's going on in the world through through not having firsthand exposure to things, or just hearing the sensational aspect of what we're living through right now. This, of course, weighs on our minds. Uncertainty is a friend of, a trigger basically for worry and for thoughts that don't stop moving, ruminative thinking. And that, of course, affects our sleep. And then, of course, how we are living at home, in our bedroom, in that sleeping space. So it looks like from those that I can see, we are not working in our bedrooms. And so that is a positive. I don't know if anyone that's on a video off is in their bedroom right now, but that will be something, a take home here, to not work in your bedroom. Okay, there's a few take homes. Our routines are important. So our routines have certainly changed for most of us from how they had been pre-quarantine, but it is important to always be mindful of routine, and your routine can always be adaptive regardless of whether or not you're in quarantine. So those things that are working for you, maintain it, and the things that are not, this is a good time to make a shift. Now we're here on Monday. It's the start of a new work week, and this is a good time to assess and see what from the past 6 or 8 weeks has been working for you, and continue to implement them. And those things that have not, now's a great time to make a shift. At this point, you've probably noticed how your daily and your nighttime routine has changed. And it's going to be a constant process, as weather's changing, right? As it's, we're now getting sunlight, thankfully a little bit, more of the day, and it's warmer. We can be outside a little bit more. So constantly making adjustments. Okay, and this kind of ties into the other thing that's on our mind right now, our health. How can we strengthen our immune system? And sleep right here is tied back in. So another take home, let's, think about taking care of ourselves more generally, our diet, regularly, of course, taking into account whatever works for you, what is a feel good for you, but also those things that feel very nourishing for you. Physical activity, certainly we've all seen or heard that we can do a lot of things even if we're not going to our gym or our preferred studio to exercise. There's a lot we can do from home, and being mindful of that, and when that also might work into your routine. Managing worry, another very important thing. That is, what my day job basically can be, to help people develop strategies to help themselves manage worry, but thinking about that for yourselves too, and of course sleep. So some of the other things going on right now related to sleep are these very vivid dreams. So I imagine, I'll be hearing from anyone that wants to chime in about some of the dreams that they've been having right now. But there definitely are a lot of things on our minds, and it's really manifested themselves in this phenomenon that we've kind of seen globally on pandemic inspired dreams. And this was just something I grabbed from Instagram recently, that yeah, this is really going on. And there was just a Time magazine article on this topic the other day, examining the science behind it, but certainly anecdotally, this is happening. And this is normal. This is what we're all going through right now. And going back in history, this has happened in other periods of extreme stress. Post 9/11, there were, I don't know, thinking back and remembering if you had dreams like that from that period of time. But it's something that's going on, and that does not mean that there's anything abnormal in any way with you if you are in this category. Okay, so it's normal responses to uncertainty, and it really makes sense right now. So as far as managing them, it might take a little bit more time to wind down from them. It can also be triggered by sleep deprivation and sleep disruption, or changes in substance use too, which might also be going on right now while everyone's in quarantine. And then there's also the regular intrusive thoughts that happen regardless of whether or not we're in a pandemic. So I just thought this was funny. Me laying in bed at 3 a.m. when I realized I should have said something else in an argument I had in 2017, right? So this is always relevant. And my point of including this image is that this is, sleep disruption is certainly not new to a pandemic. It's just quite global right now. I'll just briefly touch on insomnia and sleep disruption. I'm not really speaking so much about insomnia right now, which is more of an established pattern. I'm speaking more about sleep disruption, but certainly those who do regularly suffer from insomnia are quite familiar with what I'm about to share, and they're likely, if it's not being managed either medically or through therapy or other techniques, are likely experiencing it right now as well. So what insomnia is dissatisfaction with your sleep quantity or quality. So and it's something that's ongoing, present at least 3 nights a week for a lengthy period of time. And it's more that perception. It's distress. It's clinically significant distress about it. And it's something that's not also explained by other medical or psychological issues. So what disturbed sleep is more typically due to stress, or the effects of other things too, such as a medical disorder, mental disorder, or substances. Okay. I'll just briefly talk about sleep. Let me see where we're at time-wise. Yeah, we just have a few minutes. Basically, our sleep cycle is guided by our internal clock, and that's important to keep in mind because the more we can honor our internal clock, the more likely we're going to sleep better. It's going to have positive effects on our sleep. So the way we can help honor our circadian rhythm is to wake up at a regular time and get out of bed at that time, and be sensitive to our light exposure and the regularity of activities. So like to my point earlier about establishing and maintaining a routine for yourself. How do we sleep? Or what is compelling us to sleep is something inside of us called the sleep drive, similar to a hunger drive, and it increases throughout the day, which is why we feel sleepy at night, and we honor that by getting into bed. When we and it decreases through the night, and then in the morning it will hopefully be low, so we can get out of bed and start our day. A healthy routine supports a sleep drive, and taking naps really does not do a great thing for our sleep drive because it confuses us. So, and if we do nap, the best time to nap is certainly early in the day for short periods of time where you are setting an alarm. And those, of course, are days where you're really needing it. but it absolutely can affect sleep drive. And every tip I'm about to say is 100% individual. I'm speaking on the more general level because everyone is different and everyone responds differently. But generally speaking, naps are not so great, and if you do nap, short and early. Okay, so it's always important, but certainly right now, to be mindful of healthy sleep practices, such as our environment, a comfortable, as the weather is changing, notice this too, paying attention to the temperature, the lighting, how comfortable you are, your sleeping and eating patterns. I'm sorry. Well, I guess it's all part of sleep hygiene as just your eating patterns. Clock watching, that's another important thing to keep in mind. So if you are noticing that in the middle of the night, you notice that it is, 2 o'clock, and you look over again a little bit later to see what time it is, right? And those with videos on, I'm seeing some nodding going on. That is something that is not our friend when we are trying to sleep. And to the extent you can, try to minimize the clock watching. Exercise, pay attention to how that's working for you. If, high impact cardio in the evening tends to affect your sleep drive, right? Make that switch to some earlier time of the day. However, if it doesn't, then go right ahead. But getting into a rhythm, a routine is going to be, only your friend when it comes to boosting sleep. And physical activity is, certainly across the board, and pretty much in every slide we're talking about immunity. It helps, it helps mental health. It's a great thing. So doing what you can in a way that works for you. And then of course, being mindful of substances right now. Certainly caffeine can have an impact, of course, on your sleep. So if you are someone who is caffeine sensitive, making decisions on an intake, same thing with alcohol, or anything else too, that, basically everything we put into our body has an effect on us. So just being mindful and making those choices if you are concerned about sleep. Okay, so we're going to be now shifting to specific tips for home. I have included an image of someone working on their bed because that's how it's done. Certainly, if we have the luxury of having a home office and have space from everybody that we're living with, that is, that's a positive. But if you don't, trying to make decisions where your sleep space is not your workspace, because what happens inside of here is that we associate the bed with all sorts of other activities. So ideally, the bed should really be associated with sleep and relaxing activities only, from a very behavioral perspective, and we are behavioral beings. Same thing with, think about our relaxing time too. We might be comfortable working from our couch, but that area is also where we're relaxing on a Saturday night now too. So just being mindful about your choices. And again, we all have different limitations based on, our environment and everything, but the most important thing is removing your work area from your bedroom and removing electronics from your bedroom too. Okay, so you're gonna want to create an ideal sleep environment for yourself, being mindful of light, electronics, and your news and media consumption right now, timing of that mostly, right? How it's affecting us. If the quiet time for you is at the end of the day, and that's when you want to catch up on the news stories of the day, but then you're realizing it's carrying over into your stress levels, or your thinking as you're winding down for bed, then then consider making a switch there. We already spoke about naps and exercise and all of these other things. Tip number 3, de-stressing. So what might have been your go-tos? I think, hopefully by now at this point into quarantine, we have identified some other strategies to help us de-stress. But there can be, there's, even though we are not able to do everything we typically do to de-stress, there's really, an infinite amount of techniques and strategies we can try. So consider trying something different. And certainly, just off the top of my head, some things that we can all do, regardless of distance, is to connect with other people, right? And to listen to, to music, say that, that knows no distance. You just won't be out at a show. You might be, just listening to it and within the confines of your home, and that can be nice too. Reading, of course, all sorts of approaches. And again, back to the regularity and routine. And know what to do if you can't sleep. So over time, I imagine you've hit this wall before where you said, okay, I don't know what to do when I can't sleep. Or you said, you know what, this is what typically works for me. So certainly if you know what works, go for, try those strategies. And if you don't, now is a great time to figure things out. But one of the most effective things that anyone, from sleep medicine and, it's psychology would suggest is if you find yourself tossing and turning for a period of time that feels uncomfortable for you, get up and change it up for yourself. Get out of bed. This is when you can have, if you're like me and you have a pile of clothes that hasn't been put away from the laundry, that's a great time to roll socks. If you have that book that you haven't been able to get into because every time you open it up, you yawn or just it's so boring for you, that's a great thing to turn to in the middle of the night if you can't sleep. And what I would recommend is, getting out of bed, going somewhere different. If you have that, that luxury to do that and sit somewhere else, turn on a low light and sit down and start to read. And the moment you notice yourself yawn, that is the moment to, to head back to your bed. And try again. What you're doing is resetting yourself in that moment. And that can be all you need. And always know that one night of sleep isn't going to set things off on, that slide where I said all of the damaging effects of not sleeping. It's going to take a cumulative effect. It certainly will affect us in the short term as far as perhaps concentration or irritability or things like that in the short term. But one night of sleep, as far as our thinking around it, it's not a catastrophe. So that's important to keep in mind. I'm going to move on. Well, that was my final slide here. I know that there are some comments. I don't know if I'll be able to see them, but I'll look at them in a second. But this is where you can find me. I have my website, my email address, and Twitter up there. I also down below have included my other website. I've started another small business, and this is where, this is why I started to go to HAYVN, is because I've started a journaling focused business in the past year, and I've written a few journals and have a blog and have been doing some workshops, and we'll be creating some more online workshops coming up soon too. So if you are interested in that, you can have a look at that website as well. And oh yeah, and I put this photo too of these are things that I've done. But and let's see, let's go back to the comments. Let's see the chat. Okay, so I'm just now opening up the chat for the first time. And we, yeah. Okay,
If you
so
want,
waking up,
sorry.
go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I was going to read them to you if you needed, but go ahead, you can read them.
Okay, sounds good. So waking in the middle of the night with to-dos and anxious thoughts. So again, it's worth saying again, because this is what a lot of the most frustrating things. The other thing that happens in the middle of the night, the intrusive thoughts are, that's when they really spiral and they really spark, because our filters of what seems reasonable seem to be sleeping. But again, having that conversation, rehashing an old conversation, or catastrophic thinking of some future event, which during the daytime you might say, okay, whoa, you're getting way ahead of yourself, and it's a solvable problem. That filter is really not working in the middle of the night. So really, my recommendation would be to, when you notice that that's going on, get out of bed, reset by doing one of these really boring activities. It is important to not do work in the middle of the night, though. Again, us being behavioral beings, we will learn to say, it's a quiet time and I can get some work done, every time I'm up in the middle of the night. And that can become its own habit that you create. So that can be reinforced. So it's really important that whatever you do choose to do, that it's something where you can turn it off as soon as, and it's not going to really wake you up too much to be doing it. And the moment you feel yourself get sleepy again, you can try again. Let's see, I'm getting up. Yeah, so a lot of waking in the middle of the night with lots of things on our minds, tossing and turning. Okay, so, and somebody had recommended wearing a sleep mask. And that, it's, if you notice you're photosensitive, if you're sensitive to light in the morning, or also noise sensitive, there's certainly modifications you can make for that. Generally a light sleeper, but since this March, I am extra sensitive to noise. So sometimes I have to use white noise in the background, absolutely. And the air conditioner, which we'll probably need to start using at some point soon, is another form of white noise as well. Yeah. So that's where, setting up your environment as it works for you. And this next comment is going to be, it's certainly non-pandemic specific, but if you have a bed partner that has a different ideal sleep environment as yourself, that's just something that the two of you need to work through. That's always, it's a continual source of, can be stress, but if one person likes it 10 degrees warmer than the other person, and that's something that I recommend navigating, but that is also a pretty common thing. Sleeping too much. Okay, so I'll talk about quantity of sleep in a second, and then somebody else recommended getting up, changing beds, and putting the eye mask on, and sometimes fiber cereal, and get back into so if you have the flexibility of having a different place to go, that's something that a lot of people do find helpful, is another bed. If there's another open bed somewhere, that can be good, a nice backup. You just have to think about what your long-term goals are. If you want to be sleeping in your bed, it's certainly fine in the short term, but it might be something where you have to, if it's an occasional thing, it's totally fine. But if you're doing it every night and you want to get back to your bed, then it's sort of like you're retraining yourself, and re-sleep training yourself to do that. And the fiber cereal, again, anything in your diet that you notice works for you. I wouldn't recommend eating when you can't sleep. And if you notice that you're hungry, perhaps it means that you are needing a little bit more prior to sleep. Because again, this can just become a new pattern that you're establishing. Where there's that pint of ice cream in the middle of the night every night, which we all might identify with at some point in our life. Okay, what are your thoughts on sleeping pharmaceuticals such as melatonin, sleep aids, and then Ambien? And that was another question. And then write things down. Okay, so and then the snoring bed partner. So those are the questions. So as far as sleep aids, and this will be my, it's going to lead into my plug for something called CBTI. But sleep aids absolutely can be beneficial, and they are phenomenal. Again, it's on that individual response. Everyone's different, so we will all respond differently to anything we put into our body. But many people find melatonin useful, some do not. Many people find sleep aids and Ambien very useful, and then others, it affects everyone slightly differently. But generally speaking, they're just fine, but they are short acting. They will get you through the night. They are not long-term strategies, and the best long-term strategy for beating something that becomes an insomnia or that already is an insomnia would be something called CBTI, and that is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that is the gold standard treatment of insomnia right now. It's in the, in research, it is just as effective as sleep aids in the, as far as increasing sleep quantity. But with the added benefit of the CBTI is that you're learning long-term strategies. And some of those strategies we've addressed today, as far as, some sleep hygiene and thinking about your routine, the very behavioral things. But it goes in more depth and really examines a lot of the thinking and learning some new strategies there too. And it's very behavioral as far as setting a set wake time. And the goal is also to improve sleep efficiency and sleep quality as well. And I, in my practice, am a CBTI trained provider, and that is, it's a very cool thing, and I've seen it work, and I'm a fan of it because I've seen the results, and it's great. So is it good to write things? So I hope that answered your questions. But yes, sleep aids are totally fine. You can try them out. If you're noticing that you're feeling groggy the next day, and it's impacting how you're functioning, then that is probably not the right aid for yourself. Writing things down, like a to-do list before going to bed, absolutely. That can be something. It's and what's great about keeping that near your bed is that if you are having a thought as you are falling asleep, trying to fall asleep, you can then get it out of your head and off of clear up that space in your mind by writing it down. So I am a big fan of that strategy, whatever it looks like. I would just say not digitally, because our phones and our digital lives can, one thing can lead into another. You go onto your memo tab to write down a note for yourself, but then you end up doing anything else on your phone that you are trying to not do. And other than white noise, how do you deal with a snoring bed partner? That is, a perennial challenge. However, it is, you getting earplugs is another strategy. But if this is something where it's presumed, sleep apnea, which, depending on your bed partner would need to get tested. Maybe you already know if that is relevant. There are ways to manage apnea, very effective ways, which are a good thing for, can be a good thing for everyone. So that would be something to look into if you are suspecting that there could be more underlying the snoring.
I think there was one question, I don't know if you answered, about what about sleeping too much?
Oh yes, sleeping. Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. It was someone named Laura who had asked that. I don't know, because that's a very qualitative assessment. So I'm wondering how much you mean by that. Because some people like sleeping too much might be, 8 hours, or it might be, having trouble getting out of bed because they still want to sleep. So I can, if I don't hear back on that, I can just answer. Feel free to chime in if you want to unmute yourself to answer that. But another thing to keep in mind is that our sleep can also be a symptom of, two things. Sleep can be, a coping response to what's going on. So it might feel really comfortable to sleep. And some people are finding that they are sleeping more, and that happens under, can happen under times of stress. It also can be a way to avoid, some emotions. However, the other thing I was going to say is that significant changes in sleep quantity can also be, symptom of mental health issues too. So sleeping too little or too much, however it's defined, and I'm just giving general guidelines here, would be perhaps worthy of, just noticing that change would be worthy of talking about with your, your own providers.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Marni. I think you
Oh,
answered.
sure. I'm just going to comment on that.
Stick around and, sorry.
Yeah, so in answer to the question, so sleeping in until 10 or 11 a.m., is that a symptom of depression? So yeah, so sort of as I was saying, without, it's hard to answer I can't answer on any individual level without, talking to an individual, but absolutely could be a sign of mental health functioning right now, including depression. So.
Well, good. So I think at this point we're going to wrap up. We can stay on just to chat more individually if you want. Tomorrow there is a session on marketing on a budget and how to create a webinar by Kate Urey, which will be a lot of fun. And this was really fascinating, Marni. And obviously people, if you want to put more in the chat, or you can reach out to find out more information by Marni. And so hopefully everybody tonight can get a good sleep. Go out and exercise.
Yes, I really hope that you take this I know we're all home, but take it home with you and put it into practice.
Okay, great.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.